All right, I want to welcome everyone to today's Jacksonville Roundtable event. Today's going to be actually a special day for everyone. So the first thing I want to do is just welcome all of our veterans and everything. Hopefully you've had some time to go out there and enjoy your day. Also, I want to thank a personal friend of mine, Charlie Tremazzo with the USO. He actually worked with the USO to help veterans land jobs. So if you do need a veteran and you need them to work in your field, just reach out to him. First and foremost, after our veterans, I should say, I want to thank South Carolina Roundtable and the Atlanta Roundtable for helping us out and putting all of this together, as well as everyone on our panel. The Jacksonville Roundtable is very honored that we could actually do this throughout Southeast USA and try to get an array of people. With the virtual events going on because of COVID, it's really hard to sometimes go out there and do our typical dinners and luncheons and everything that we do. So we're trying to take the advantage and taking the positive parts of this. And the positive drive on this is that we could grab people from around our country that we normally wouldn't be able to see. So I want to thank everyone from the other roundtables and our panel on all of that. Now, one thing that lots of people don't like about virtual events is that you don't have a chance to meet people. So one thing that I want to invite all of you to do is, if you want to put out your like a so-called virtual business card, feel free to go on the chat, say who your name, business is, and contact information like emails if you want other people to get in touch with you. And if there's someone in particular you want to talk to, you could always do a private chat to them. So I encourage that so that you could still have those opportunities out there. 3 events that's coming up. We have the November 19th, just around the corner here. We're going to do a trivia event. It's also going to be virtual. It will be at 6 p.m. So if you haven't seen one of those events, reach out to myself or one of our board members. We have a few of them on here. Mohib and Ike is also on here right now. So reach out to one of us. We will give you any of the invites if you do not have that. For December 11th at 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., we're going to do our day of service, which we've been doing for the last few years now at the USO Mayport. That event is to give out little toys and have the little kids see Santa and take pictures with Santa. It will be COVID protected, so you don't have to worry about COVID and all that. We will be having those precautions in place. And the very next day, December 12th, in the morning hours, also, we're going to be doing a Talon sock drive where all members of Talon, including CSCMP Jacksonville Roundtable, will be getting together. So please take a note of those. If you need those additional invites, please reach out to me or one of our board members, and we'll be more than happy to help you. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to my Vice President, Mohib. He will be introducing our panels today.
Thank you, Jeremy. And thank you all for coming today. I appreciate it. My name is Mohib Beacon. I'm the Vice President for CSCMP. I work for General Electric, and I'll be introducing your speakers and your moderator today, and then passing it off to them for the rest of the event. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Rob Haddock. So Rob is a supply chain innovation leader with decades of supply operations, logistics management experience with the Coca-Cola Company. I have Marcus Tyrance, I apologize, is a director of private asset and national accounting intermodal services for CSX Transportation. He leads a team of sales managers, and he started there in 2019. Now he's been around. He worked with Union Pacific Railroad and so on and so forth. Ben Cubit, Senior Vice President, Counseling and Transplace Network Solutions, 30 years of industry and consulting experience in freight optimization. Mr. Cubit has a deep familiarity with the freight optimization for consulting firms in multiple Fortune 500 companies in consumer products, paper, and manufacturing industries. And Jack Floyd, who's a price management analyst at Georgia Pacific. within the strategic sourcing group. He's experienced in data analytics, logistics planning, process improvement, and supply chain innovation. And then, of course, we have Ike Sherlock. Now, what's really awesome about Ike is that apart from everything else, so total distribution, he's been doing that. Before that, he was doing Grimes. He was the CEO of the Grimes companies. But he's also a past president for CSCMP who has been intimately involved with all of our operations, and can't thank you enough for all the support that you've given and all the support that you continue to give. With all that said, I'll turn it over now, and I appreciate it. So thank you, Ike. Please.
Thank you, Mahib, and welcome, panelists. It is indeed an honor to be with you tonight. I'm really, really excited about the dialogue we're about to have for industry experts, and we're just going to throw some questions out there and see what 2020 has brought, what the rest of the year is going to hold, and more importantly, what they are seeing as industry experts for 2021. So, gentlemen, we've seen some pretty wild swings in the freight market over the last 5 years. Look into your crystal ball for me and tell me what you're thinking about as you plan your domestic transportation for 2021. I'd like to start with you, Rob.
All right, thanks, Ike. I'll take a swat at it and see what happens. The process every month for us starts with what's going on in the bigger economy, and we look at the ISM, we look at housing starts, new truck sales, etc., to find out, is there an overarching, increasing the economy or contraction of the economy? And depending on which way the tea leaves are saying, we kind of look at, all right, what's that going to mean to us? Are we going to be fighting more for transportation with our peers in the industry or cross industries? Or is capacity going to be a little more relaxed? And we also bring in, half a dozen other market experts who are giving us insights. We've just finished up, our 2021 bid process, which was executed very well, and the Transplace team helped us out on that. And we think 21 is going to be kind of a tight market start until we get some type of vaccine that's out there, and we've got drivers get more comfortable going out and about and driving more of the longer runs. We don't see any real issues with short haul because people can get home if something pops up at home. But for those drivers that are gone for extended periods of time, we see that the most difficult. And we have a lot of freight that falls into that category. So, more challenging in the first half of the year, optimistic that the second half gets a little bit easier for us to manage.
Thank you. So Ben, I know you were involved in that bid process, and you're involved in many bid processes across the country. You're seeing pretty much the same thing, tight market over the road and easier market, looser domestically? Or
I think we do continue to see it as a tight market. We think that the economy is going to continue to expand. If you look, I've been looking for a car recently. Finding a used car or a new car is equally difficult. Automotive's just gearing back up. So, automotive is gearing back up. Housing starts. If you look at housing starts, they're back near an all-time high after dipping. And, they've followed the spot market almost exactly, created a little slide that showed the spot market and the housing market. And they both had, an early year peak, and then they had that huge trough in March and April, and now they're booming again. So when you look at a lot of things like that, oil and gas is still down, may pick up. Flatbed's been a little bit down, but it still hasn't been as robust as some of the other modes, but as expected. So everything that puts pressure on drivers, retail starting back up, some states that are still not as active as maybe the southern part of the United States where I am, restaurants still to open, other things. Everything points to more demand at a time when capacity is pretty tight. And we're back to drivers being an issue. I think drivers were one of the heroes of this past year. They drove throughout all of that, and they drove even during the deepest part. And so we never had a problem with drivers not getting in the truck and moving, and that continues today. So, but there's all sorts of pressure. And I don't know if I've ever been at a point in my career when every mode was under these constraints. And, ocean, truckload, parcel, drayage, intermodal, everything is constrained right now. And, we expect that to probably get a little bit better. But, demand's going to increase. And we think, maybe not as scary as some people think, but we do think it's going to continue to be tight capacity for 2021.
How about you, Marcus? What does CSX say?
Gosh, if I knew, I'd be sitting on a beach somewhere right now. But we get pretty good feedback from our customers, and on the intermodal side, the owner of the freight in the container, it's called the BCO, the beneficial cargo owner. They're anticipating, a pretty robust restocking cycle that we're kind of in right now, coming out of a lot of the shutdowns. So as they've worked to open up distribution centers, open up retail sales, there's been a lot of growth in just demand for restocking and replenishment. So, we're seeing that also kind of combined with, a desire maybe to have more freight or more inventory on North America coming out of the shutdown and lessons learned there. So, we think that, we'll see pretty robust demand through the end of this year. And then going into early next year, we think that cycle carries over similar to, we've heard from Ben and from Rob. And we use a lot of those same kind of organizations to read the different tea leaves and kind of see where we think that the market is going to go. But, we continue to, try to price to the market and put competitive deals together for our customers out there.
Marcus, would you concur with Rob that the biggest constraint is on over the road versus short haul intermodal?
It's hard to say. I definitely don't disagree with it. I think that what you saw from a lot of the big carriers was that their driving schools closed during COVID, or they had to distance, so they couldn't train as many drivers as they normally do. So if you look at some of the large carriers out there that have driver turnover in excess of 80% in the course of a year, they have to hire a lot of people every year and put them on the road, and they're going to come and they're going to go. And that pipeline essentially was shut off. And so that really what we see has been a challenge on the over the road side. When you look at intermodal, we fared a little better on the rail side. Luckily, two people can move 300 containers, at one time. So we're not as hamstrung from a labor perspective. So it has allowed us to still put a pretty competitive service out there.
Good. So Jack, from a Georgia Pacific perspective, what's gone right for your company in 2020? What's the unexpected bright spots that have occurred as a result of COVID?
Yeah. So I think I have two answers to that question. One is, going to be a little obvious, and the other is probably a little more nuanced. So firstly, I'd say, which is probably going to come to no one's surprise, but a little bit of luck, right? I mean, we had a black swan event that fortunately for parts of our business had a significant upside. You think about folks staying at home, consuming more paper products, whether that's paper towel or bath tissue, really boosting our branded products at home. We did, obviously take a loss on some of our professional products, so products that we sell at restaurants, but certainly the upside for us there at home outweighed the losses we took in the professional sector. And in our building products segment as well, the rise of DIYers and the proliferation of people just adding decks, building additions on their homes has really boosted our building product side. So that's probably the more obvious answer. I would say the less obvious answer is I think we were really able to focus on our core competency, which I think is making paper or making building products, right? GP, like I'm sure other companies, always talk about, we need to get back to basics, right? We need to get back to our core competency and what we're good at. And COVID really gave us no other choice. We couldn't have folks in the facilities It was harder to run in a million different directions when, we knew we needed to make paper and we needed to run better than ever before. So I would say that those two things have really been bright spots for the year.
Nice. Rob, same question.
Yeah, I think what we've seen is that in 1819 we installed a certain amount of visibility and technology to help us manage the supply chain. And it was really coming out of 2018 and all the struggles there. So load tracking and key performance results management with our carriers. And I think all that stuff really helped us in 2020 as we could see where trucks were. We could see instantaneously volume swings between the different channels where people consume product. And we were able to pass that information on to our carrier base quickly to say, okay, this is what we think is going to happen. All the restaurants over here are closed for a while. All the movie theaters are closed here. People are going to dine at home. And we've been monitoring all of those indices daily to say, okay, what's going to happen next and how do we stay ahead of it? So, that's some of the stuff that's gone right. And I think if we didn't have that visibility and that technology layer, we'd be fumbling around trying to figure out, what do you all think? Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? But the technology was in the right place at the right time.
Ben?
Yeah, I think, again, I may start a little bit with people. I think that one bright spot of 2020 was the flexibility commitment of our people. So preparing to work off-site, working remotely, just how well that transition went. I mean, I think we've always appreciated the commitment of our people, but, we have to make sure every load's covered and work with, many of our shippers are in the CPG space and they had surging supply chains. So first, that was, we just very appreciative of how smoothly that went. I think second thing was flexibility. Things like, we have retail customers, we have CPG customers, and we took trucks from a dedicated fleet in a retail customer whose stores were shuttered and moved that to a surging CPG. So that helped both of those people out, and the carrier was extremely flexible. Doing pop-up fleets to help again with some of the CPG surge we saw. I think there's been a lot of communications, a bright spot. It's carriers have struggled for a lot of different reasons. You look at just the trailer challenge, and that's been more acute recently. But, there's loads, carrier has drivers, they have trucks, and they can't find an empty trailer. So there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of communication. And I think the conversation between shippers and carriers that we're seeing and that we're helping with is more around not blame setting. Why can't you cover this load? Why can't you pick it up at 10 o'clock? But how can you pick it up, and what can we do to remove constraints? And I think that's been a real positive to see. So I think that flexibility, open communication, and working around some of the real challenges that we've seen, intermodal, having the right containers in the right place is a real challenge when you're turning supply chains off in states and regions and turning them back on. So that flexibility has been huge in 2020.
Good. Rob mentioned something I'd like to swing back around to a little bit. He mentioned that the KPIs that Coca-Cola had really established in 2018, 2019 were key to managing through the pandemic in 2020. I'll start with Jack again. Have you changed, or has Georgia Pacific changed the way they manage KPIs? Has there been a shift? Have things become more important that weren't as important before? Or are the KPIs kind of drive you through it? Yeah,
so I don't know if I'd say that there's been a shift in the KPIs we look at. I would probably say that there's been a shift in the KPIs we focus on. And of course, being in sourcing and procurement, that number one KPI is cost. So I think certainly throughout the year, I guess ever since March, there's been a laser focus on cost. How can we cut cost again to get back to that core competency of manufacturing? So I would say again, that cost that's not going to change as a KPI post pandemic, but I think at least for the time being, there's laser focus on that. And as we hopefully get beyond the pandemic, we'll start looking at things perhaps on a more holistic, total cost of ownership perspective.
How about you, Marcus? Have the KPIs shifted any in the CSX world, or have things become more focused?
They haven't shifted significantly. I think, one thing that we were really focused on, going into 2020, if I could boil it down to one KPI, was our trip plan compliance. So across our carload segment and our intermodal segment, I mean, this is measuring the transit on a piece of equipment from, the time we either ingate it in intermodal or it picks up billing on the merchandise side. And it has a plan the whole way, and it's not a plan with 2 or 3 days of buffer on either end. It's, hey, if we're supposed to have a container available Tuesday at 2 p.m., it's available Tuesday at 2 p.m. So Monday at 2 p.m. is just as bad as Wednesday at 2 p.m. So we're really focused on just taking the variability out of our network and providing a high level of service. And, whether your customers are open or closed, having reduced variability and good service is a way to manage cost, right? So you have crews where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there. The locomotive is where it's supposed to be and fully functional when it's supposed to be there. And it helps you really kind of manage and stay away from failure costs, that can creep into your network.
Thank you. So Ben mentioned something in one of his answers. He mentioned trailer capacity and trailer availability. So we know there was a huge crunch summer right after the event started in container capacity and availability. I believe there was some challenges with CSX as well, or all the railroads with capacity. And I know truckload suffered immensely. Has that loosened? I'll start with Ben. Has that loosened up? Do we still see the real constraint like we had during the summer, or is that kind of loosened up a little bit, Ben?
We look at a lot of data, and to your KPI question, tying that in a little bit, I think KPIs, the timeliness too, is how quickly you react to them. And so when you look at KPIs that would warn you that you have an issue. If you look at ocean containers or truckload capacity, California has been a challenge for months and months and months and remains a challenge. Getting product from Mexico is a tremendous challenge. There's not near as much volume going south as there was. So we've set up barge service between Texas and Florida so that we can barge some things over to Florida. Just because of this tremendous acute shortage of drivers, out of Mexico, and the ability, there's a lot of northbound freight, and there just hasn't been near as much southbound. So there's all these rolling pockets, and then there's inefficiencies in the supply chain. We talk about driver turnover, but when driver turnover goes from 60% to 80% or 90%, you lose productivity in that driver for a couple weeks. They go to the new carrier, they've got to maybe have a week orientation, and they're in the truck, maybe in a limited capacity. So that driver turnover is a direct hit on capacity. We talked about trailers, and I hadn't thought about this as much, but there's certain industries that are still closed, or certain areas that aren't coming back. So now if I'm a carrier, I used to go to point A and I had to drive 8 miles, and there was, a number of loads that I could go to. Now that place that I used to go connect that driver is not open, or is open different hours. So now I may have to drive further. So, there's these regional challenges, there's mode challenges, and there's equipment and supply chain constraints like trailers, like this, just disruptions in the network. So, we see it easing a little bit. It really, was at its worst 4 or 5 weeks ago. But there are certain parts that are just, and really overall, it's still a challenge. I think shippers are becoming more flexible and doing everything they can, and carriers are certainly work. People are adding dedicated capacity, but we still see it as a real challenge, and some places are still critical.
Thank you. Rob, equipment challenges, trailers, tractors, equipment in general?
Yeah, more so trailers. I mean, we try and do a lot of drop and hook programs either with carriers that are longer haul or dedicated. And the number of times they call up and say, "Listen, the trailers are all stuck somewhere else, and we got to switch it over here, or we got to actually broker it out," is an indication that as hard as we're trying, we still can't get the balance right at this point in time.
Marcus, intermodal equipment, rail cars?
Yeah, we see that somewhat. I mean, in our business, the container is the commodity, right? What's in it is really not so important. So we want to work to have a natural or nice flow from a surplus to deficit location. And so, we always are kind of working towards that, and the fundamentals haven't changed. But what is significantly slowed us down or impacted us is just the turn times at a lot of distribution centers. So, what maybe took 2 or 3 days to unload in the past, I mean, it could be 2 weeks sometimes, or if a container misses an appointment, it could be 2 weeks before there is an open slot to get up to a dock. So, that turn time on the equipment, the street time that we call it, kind of across the intermodal industry has been a challenge.
Do you see more street turns in general, more creativity?
We do. I think people are just taking out all the stops to be successful, right? If you have a piece of equipment, somebody will find you if you let them know. So probably more so than before, and that does help, right? So that gets the equipment loaded. It's a more efficient use of the drayage and the chassis, for that matter. You're not doubling it back to a terminal empty and then turning around a few hours later and taking it right back out. So that does help drive efficiency when you can turn on the street.
Good. So I failed to mention earlier, if anybody wants to ask any questions, just put them in the chat feature. Bethany Wright has a question. I know there's probably not a definite answer to this, or we all wouldn't be on a panel on a CSCMP group. We'd be on an island somewhere. What would have to happen to fix the balance? So in general, anybody want to comment on the things that need to move to fix the trailer imbalance or equipment imbalance? It's a good question.
Yeah, Ike, it's let me take a shot at it. This is Rob. I have a dream, and I've been working with other folks in the industry, especially within the CPG space, to have something similar to what we have with air traffic control, or even if you look at CSX's computerized war rooms, operations rooms, they know where everything is. With the visibility, the technology connections, why couldn't you start to know where all of the power units and the trailers are across all of the different carriers at customer X, customer Y? Are they in transit or on the road? So it's one of these things that it won't happen tomorrow. But if you start thinking about what is the potential with technology, then you start to know where all of the pieces of equipment are. The biggest thing will be the change management and making sure that everybody contributes at the level they need to make it successful. Air traffic control didn't happen overnight. I mean, it took 50, 60 years to figure out how to move these planes as quickly as possible. And just like Marcus said, the container is the key thing, and we're herding people in and out of planes. That's what you want to be able to do. You want to know where things are, keep them moving, and then if there's bottlenecks, work with those folks that are creating the bottlenecks to fix them.
Yeah, Rob, I think building on that, one thing we've done and our customers really asked us to do is, you see all this freight in the network, 11 billion in freight and all these different industries. How do you really, leverage that for shippers and for carriers? And so we've made an AI investment that lets us do dynamic continuous moves, which was always a challenge. You could kind of set these lanes up that would work, and but you couldn't get it dynamic. So we can see that we have 20 loads coming into Atlanta and 20 going outbound to Alabama, and we can offer those to the carriers, keep those trucks moving. Especially works in some areas where maybe it's a carrier or a customer's having trouble getting capacity back. We can find loads in our network from a different shipper that will get that truck back to a desirable place. We also have worked very hard with our customers' fleets to fill fleet backhauls. So again, if we can fill a fleet backhaul, one of our shippers' dedicated fleets on another shipper's leg, that works great because they get dedicated fleet capacity, but more like an over-the-road move. And then finally, we made an acquisition earlier this year of Lane Hub, and what Lane Hub does, I think they get 28 billion in freight in their network. They kind of create this dating service or matching service for shippers, so you can put all your lanes in, and then you can see who you can match up with, and then you can reach out to them, and you can set those two lanes up. And of course, whenever you do that, that gets rid of empty miles in the network and makes the drivers more efficient. And that's the last thing I'd say. You know, we have X amount of hours per day that a driver can legally drive, and the utilization is well below 80%, often 60%. So finding ways to more effectively use that driver's available hours is great for the driver and great for the industry. And we still have, Bob, as you said, you know, your air traffic control, we still have a lot of room to do to get those planes more efficient, you know, over the road.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So Jack, we'll take it back to the procurement side, and then we'll reach out to the other guys. Have you seen vendors who have reacted significantly better and performed significantly better in the pandemic than other vendors? And if so, if they gained market share with you? And don't say any vendor names specifically, unless you want to. But have they gained market share by pivoting and performing better?
Yeah, so I don't know if I can really comment on the market share perspective, just because I think given other operational kind of strategies within our business, there's a few more variables there than just you know, have they been better to work with, so we've given them more business. But certainly there have been you know, some vendors who have been more cooperative, more collaborative. I think given the pandemic, you know, we've had to incur price increases that are probably pretty obvious in the market, right? You can see certain commodities or certain feedstocks have gone up or down, and that's, you know, that's no secret. You see that every day in the papers. But where we have seen vendors be more collaborative and is really trying to help us out with offsetting some of those increases. So they say, hey, you know, we understand we're passing this increase on to you. You know, we can't help it. You guys see that, but where can we work together in other areas, whether that's on, you know, the service side, total cost of ownership side, or even on the price side, to help you guys out and help weather the storm.
Nice. Marcus, same question.
Yeah, I would say, you know, I'm sitting more on the commercial side. So and I don't deal a lot with the vendors, but I look at kind of our customers, right? So, you know, there's customers that have long-standing relationships with us, you know, and we have tried to be flexible with them and do the best we can, you know, to support their business. And also, you know, we have a lot of customers now, the new customers that are coming to the game. And, you know, I've been kind of in the intermodal space for a while, and, you know, you're always trying to get customers to convert a little more of your business, build intermodal is a bit of a base load to what you're doing, and it really just becomes a price play a lot of times. And so now in an environment where capacity is really tight, you know, that message starts to resonate. And so, you know, we found that the customers that have been more receptive, that have been doing intermodal for a long time, are just better prepared for this environment to do business with us. So, you know, they understand, you know, kind of the rules of engagement, rules of the road. They understand when we say, hey, look, you know, I know your facilities are backed up, but you've got to get boxes off the terminal. You know, we need to be able to turn our trains and keep our facilities fluid. They really get it, right? And they understand it, and they've been, you know, great partners to work with. And then you have others that, you know, I have to admit, right, nobody was prepared for COVID, right? Anybody that tells you they are is just, you know, flat out lying. Now, some have done better than others, but nobody was ready for it. But those with whom we've had good relationships, you know, we've really been able to kind of find common ground and do the right thing and move forward.
Yeah, Marcus and Jack both mentioned collaboration. Rob, are you seeing more of that collaboration with your vendors and your clients?
Definitely with our vendors and a little bit with our clients, our end customers. But you know, most of our portfolio of carriers, they've been with us through multiple years, the ebbs and flows. And we tend not to chase the spot market. We stay with our contracts. So when all of a sudden the spot market bottomed out earlier in the year and capacity was everywhere, we didn't chase it. we stayed with our carriers. And then when the inverse hit, they did their best to move the freight that we had contracted to them at rates that we expected, even though maybe they may have had to go outside and get another carrier at a higher price, especially if it was one of the brokers. So we've had majority of our folks do rather well. We had a few folks who struggled, and through the bid process that we just finished, those that struggled, well, they're not going to have as much business going into next year, but there's always the chance that they can bounce back if they try and fix their internal issues that created the gap.
And I know that's music to your ears to hear a client like Coca-Cola talk about not chasing the spot market. Do you see, in general, the spirit of collaboration and the spirit of, like Marcus was saying, sticking with the long-term relationships in Transplace?
Yeah, I think so. We very much believe that conducting an annual bid, a network bid, is the best practice, and that both the shipper should meet their commitment on awards and the carrier should meet their commitment on primary tender acceptance. And so the two big questions we get are the big question, is where's the market headed, and then should I conduct a bid this year? And as people look at that, it's been interesting. The next question is, and how do we remain a preferred shipper? And I've been surprised. We'll do over 250 bid events and multiple, probably 10 different bid events with people with more than 500 million in freight, and lots of medium, small shippers, but still a commitment to being a preferred shipper. Even bids we were doing earlier in the year, which was really a beat down market, as Rob said, with lots of capacity. So, but we have seen route guides get a little more dynamic, meaning when spot rates are very low, if you have discretionary freight, people might swing a little bit more of that to the spot market. And we've seen, you used to do a bid event, you locked in your route guide, and it was good for a year, and your same strategy worked year after year. Well, these, this is the fifth time I've told somebody this is a once in a lifetime event. So I'm not sure what once in a lifetime means, but I'm on about my fifth one. So the last 5 years. So I think that's one change we've seen is, route guide and your transportation strategy needs to be a little bit more flexible. You want to honor your commitments, you want to do things right, but you've got to be flexible to be able to react to these crazy wild market swings we've seen of both capacity and price.
Thank you. Let's see. Let's read one from the chat. Rivera, what have we learned from this pandemic from a logistics standpoint? Any specific lessons learned personally or professionally that anybody want to share?
I'll start. Just really around flexibility. You could wake up one morning and what you firmly believe is no longer true, as kind of what a lot of us have gone through. So you just have to be flexible, right? And understand that, maybe a couple years ago, if a customer came and said, hey, my industry is completely falling apart, you may have been a little skeptical of it. It was a little easier when it was hitting everybody at the same time. But it's real for our customers. And so we try to definitely be receptive and just across the board. Railroads typically, don't get high marks for being flexible, right? Our infrastructure is, nailed into the ground, right? So to make remarkable, 180-degree swings can be tough. But we did that as a company, when we had to really kind of wind our network down and right size it, so to speak. We did that thinking that this would be, 6 months of, shutdowns. And it was like 6 weeks. And our business came back. You look at our auto franchise. A lot of times people don't really think how many vehicles move on the railroad. But there was a point a few months back where nobody was making cars in the U.S., right? So how do you just completely shut that industry down and then turn it back on in a matter of weeks, right? And so we were very flexible and have gotten pretty high marks across the board there. So, I think flexibility is the number one thing. You can have a great franchise, great business, but again, what you believe can kind of be turned on its head for a period of time.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that is, it's just reinforced to us the importance of data-based decisions. You have to have that flexibility, but, react to data, react to what's really happening in your network, not to headlines or anything like that. So, have data and then have flexibility and timely decisions, and then make decisions based on data and real information.
Jack?
Yeah, I guess I don't have any answers to that, unfortunately.
All right, let's get another question in the chat. Rob's already started to answer this in the chat. What are your plans and preparations for hurricane season as far as your drivers and customers?
Go ahead. I'll start off. Whether weather events, whether it be snowstorms or hurricanes, or you may even say that holiday season is an event that is a not abnormal event. Fortunately, we had procedures as to how to manage each one of those. And what we are just doing is that we're in a perpetual management mode for these abnormal situations. And it is, it has definitely stressed out our systems. Cokes, as well as all the other consumer product goods, have been pushed to the wall, getting products to the grocery channels and all the trucking companies that are associated with them. It sounds simple, but just having some plan as to what are you going to do if something goes wrong. We've not always had plans, and we've been, a decade ago, something went wrong, and we'd run around going, what do you want to do? Who's in charge? We learned very quickly that we can't let that happen anymore. We're better than that. So that's been part of our learning. We never thought it would be day after day after day, but it has come in handy.
Marcus, Ben, hurricane-specific planning?
Yeah. Go ahead. I'll just say, we're a full contact outdoor sport in railroading. So, we deal with, in a given week, we could have a hurricane and a snowstorm on opposite ends of our network. So, we are kind of constantly, watching the weather. In terms of the, Hurricane Ada, it's going to hit Florida somewhere. So it's been on our radar for a while. And so we kind of communicate to our customers if we're going to have shutdowns, or if there's maybe extended, periods of time where a terminal or a piece of the network might be closed. We've had, Hurricane Zeta. And I think I got to get my Greek alphabet right. I haven't used it since college, but Hurricane Zeta hit parts of our network pretty hard, and so we've fought hard to come back from that. So we really keeping our eye to the sky, so to speak, and look at the weather. And then we have tremendous forces in the field that are out there, literally right on the tail of a storm. We've employed drone technology to get out and inspect the track before you can even get people in there. So we have a good idea of what maybe it takes to repair a stretch of track, days before we could in the past sometimes. So, we're always continuing to learn.
And I can jump in on that from the procurement perspective. When we look at hurricane planning or weather event planning, it's all about having the right supplies in the right places at the right time. So if we see a weather event coming, we'll make sure to load in generators or PPE or extra safety supplies. And that's given that we're not shut down, which we do a lot of the time. But we make sure just to keep the lines of communication open and make sure that we have backups of critical supplies.
Yeah, and the other thing I would add is, like Marcus, many of our customers, they ship water into areas that are hard hit, other critical supplies, or retailers bringing in things. And so it's just a full-on event, and they have centers around it. So what we've added is visibility and kind of forecast into that. So we've implemented a company called Risk Pulse and also MacroPoint. But what Risk Pulse does is it assigns risk to loads, either in the planning or in the moving stage, and tells you, so we can look at a dashboard and say, these are the 200 loads you need to be concerned about, and here's where they are. And it's hurricanes, it's congestion. When we were implementing them 2 years ago, talked about things like civil unrest, and we thought, well, that's not a factor. And this year, civil unrest has been a factor in some areas. And so, that technology to aid in the planning and to really know where a truck is, to know what's at risk, to offer options to route around, or know you should avoid this area for this amount of time, and here's the exact loads that are at risk, has really been a change for us and for our customers.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So one of the discussions that we've seen a lot of talk on in the last couple of months is potentially manufacturers shortening their supply chains, bringing stuff back into the U.S. to shorten the supply chain in the event of some type of other black swan event or a reset of COVID. I thought it was very interesting. I was speaking to Jack about the Georgia-Pacific supply chain and how short it is. And I'd like him to elaborate on that a little bit. And then I would ask if you guys are seeing your clients move towards or hearing anybody move towards shortening their supply chain. So, Jack?
Yeah, and so I guess that's a fact that you bring up that many folks may not know, but that aside from maybe 4 or 5 facilities in Canada, we at Georgia Pacific manufacture solely in the U.S. That hasn't always been the case, but I mean, you think about a lot of the goods we're producing, paper goods, lightweight, low value, I suppose, unless they're branded. So not really cost effective to source plywood from China or paper from China. So that was certainly a benefit, I think, in terms of weathering, the COVID storm. Was we already had a short supply chain. We didn't have to deal with tariffs, at least on our finished products, and just supply issues with coming from China early on.
Anybody else seeing your clients or hearing your clients talk about shortening that supply chain?
I think the two things we're seeing is we're probably seeing more nearshoring than reshoring. So seeing quite a bit come to Mexico. Mexico certainly has had a strong and continuing impact from COVID, but we definitely saw a lot more manufacturing in Mexico. Maybe coming back. It's hard to tell exactly, but Mexico's just continue to develop as a supply base for U.S. companies, and certainly when that's replacing Asia, that shortens the supply chain. We've also seen flexibility in ocean sailings. So obviously Southern California can become a constraint, and so you see Savannah, you see some of the East Coast ports and just port strategies. We see some of that changing. So while it may not be reshoring, it's giving you flexibility maybe in your approach, and that shortens your supply chain in that you're closer, and you may hit multiple ports, and so you can hit customers and shorten the the delivery once it hits the port.
I would say for us, I mean, we're, it's a asset-based transportation company. I mean, we're fans of free trade and long supply chains, right? So we'll gladly move it for you all over North America. But we are seeing more customers that are more cognizant of that, right? They're not chasing, maybe short-term savings that could have them having long-term challenges, if things change around them. And we do hear more about customers wanting to manufacture in Mexico and understand what that means from a rail perspective to reach some of the same markets in the U.S.
Rob, any feedback on that one?
Well, no, I mean, if you think about our product, it's similar to what Jack mentioned. It doesn't pay to really move it very far distances. So whatever country we're in, we're sourcing and producing and servicing those particular customers with very little stuff that's moving across borders.
So Mexico has been mentioned several times, and I know you guys are all very keyed into all of the key performance indicators and metrics from a national and international supply chain standpoint. Do you feel that the new administration is going to roll back some of the tariffs and increase trade and make trade a little easier? Or do you feel like we're going to be status quo?
Which administration? I'm joking.
I felt everybody take a step back from that question.
Yeah, and not all at once. So I think it's a little early to tell, right? I mean, there's what folks say in an election, and then doing that they find can be very challenging, because also you can make these policy changes, but then people have to realign their supply chains before it really takes effect. And that's not something that's done overnight. So, it's really hard to say.
I'll step back from that one. I'll ask Marcus one specifically. What is CSX doing to build out more of the intermodal capacity? And is the biggest challenge manpower, equipment, or infrastructure?
So if you talk about kind of capacity growth, I mean, I probably our project that I would highlight the most right now is a new terminal that's under construction right now in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. So it's our Carolina Connector terminal. So that's going to open up, a wide swath in the Mid-Atlantic to have intermodal service from CSX that we're not serving today. And so that's the challenge, is you're trying to grow your business. You're talking to customers and they're like, gosh, 10 trains a day come through here. Why can't we do business? And it's like, well, none of them stop. So that's why we really can't do business with you. But we are adding new dots on the map. We're employing technology to get more out of the infrastructure that we have today. Another area we're really focusing on are inland ports, that we work with a lot of steamship lines. So we're going to have inland port capability there in Rocky Mount. We've got one in Chatsworth, Georgia, one that just opened in Syracuse. And there's one more that I'm forgetting in Dillon, South Carolina. So these are extensions of the service that comes into the ports on the East Coast. So these are all areas, and it's short haul intermodal, very short haul, just a few hundred miles typically inland from the port, but it gets away from that congestion in the port facility. It shortens your drayage miles if you can move the container just a few hundred miles inland. So in the grand scheme of things, I mean, all the things you mentioned are a challenge. Our network is right on top of some of the most populated cities in the U.S. So it's challenging maybe to say we're going to expand an intermodal terminal, say in Atlanta, but we did that last year, and we went vertical, right, instead of going horizontal. So there's a lot of things that we can do, to employ, whether it's technology, whether it's greenfield acquisitions, but we are committed to growing the network and growing our business.
So for the panel, as you design your supply chain for 2021, what's number one on the to-do list? What's first and foremost in your mind? Is it capacity, is it technology, safety, or something else?
Yeah, it's Rob. I'd say safety with our team members at the plants, and then also the drivers that are coming and going. Because if you lose control of that environment, then you've got bigger issues. So we've got to continue to focus on keeping people safe until vaccines are readily available and they're widespread through the population.
I would agree. I mean, with safety, the railroad safety is always, job 1, 2, and 3. But when you add in COVID, we're kind of daily evaluating what's the right staffing levels. I mean, so many of our roles are absolutely essential. Like you can't do them from home. Like somebody's got to get up and go clock in. So we're constantly looking at the different protocols that we have. Are we keeping our employees, socially distanced? Do we have the right PPE? And do we have the mindset behind it, right? Because, we can have all the rules in the world, but, if people just don't necessarily believe the threat or the risk, that just becomes a challenge to manage that. And then second to that, it's service, right? Because that's what we do, right? We're a service company. We don't have a product. And so providing, significantly better service than the competition, is what it will take for us to be successful next year.
Yeah, the thing I would add, we operate in industries like oil and gas and manufacturing where safety is a primary concern. We start meetings that way, and certainly, safety is critical. But also critical, I think, for 2021 is capacity in a market and many industries that are essentially in a shelf restocking mode or a manufacturing restart up. It's all about meeting that demand. And so where in the past we had more, smoother supply chains and you were trying to drive efficiencies in operation. People still want to do that and people are cost conscious, but it is so much about meeting demand. If you're a CPG with surging demand and record demand and cleaning supplies, and people are going to continue to keep cleaning, you want to meet that demand. You want to help people, fill that need. So, and if you're a retailer who's seeing, really strong brick and mortar sales, and you want to keep that product flowing to your stores. So for our retail customers, our CPG, food and beverage, really all of our industries, oil and gas, chemical that support all those other industries, it has very much supply chain always wanted a seat at the board, and the first seat we got was 2018. It was a hot seat because of price and capacity, and now we've got a seat about how are you going to make sure you get this product to market and keep these shelves full and meet this surging demand, be it e-commerce or a grocery retailer. It is all about keeping the product flowing right now.
And I'll tie all that off by echoing everyone's comments about safety first and foremost. But I think from a procurement perspective for GP in 2021, we're going to try and be more focused on processes, back to basics, 6-step sourcing process, and really becoming more process adherent.
That puts Bona really nicely. We're right at an hour. I only have 17 more questions. I'll just throw one last question out there for the truck guys specifically. Automated vehicles, specifically self-driving trucks, when do they become a part of your supply chain plan? 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, or never?
Yeah, I'll jump in first. First of all, trucks are becoming more automated, and now we're starting to see it in cars. But there's a lot of safety equipment and a lot of self-driving. We need to recruit drivers. Most trucks ordered today are automatics, and so that widens the number of people that can come in. There are trucks that can drive from LA to Phoenix and have, and so I don't think you're going to see widespread utilization of automated trucks on every road and every shipment. You're going to see individual use cases first, as we've seen. So platooning, or the ability to take an autonomous truck and run it on the highways and have collection points and local drivers that pick up. And there's a lot of people starting to address that. So I think autonomous vehicles are coming. There's things, we talked about Mexico a number of times. If you've been to Laredo, it's unbelievable how long drivers wait shuttling trailers across the border in Laredo. Intermodal drayage, there seem to be some use cases like that you could make would be early adopters of automation. So the technology is already starting to get out. Trucks are more and more automated. Some of that is having a nice benefit from a safety perspective and driver fatigue. So I think we'll continue to see the technology emerge, and I think we'll see use cases first and then wider adoption. I think we're a little bit of a while before wide industry level adoption, but these use cases are where we're really going to see early adoption and see that volume just continue to grow.
Yeah, Ike, it's Rob. I'm predicting the I-10 corridor probably no shorter than 5 years from now, and it'll be those open miles where between hubs. And we're working with a few folks in that geography to try and figure out how to do it safely. But it's going to be you have to be very patient for this thing to come in. And even then, it's going to be really specific around certain parts of the country where over the next 20 years, it'll be able to play in.
I'll just add in that, a lot of the things that people are looking for from autonomous vehicles, you can get from the railroad today. So just keep that in mind. A lot of those things, you already have it. So
I guess I can actually jump in on that one as well. I know at GP we're currently running trials for autonomous yard spotting trucks. So certainly I think that's coming in the next few years.
That's good.
Parting shots. Anybody want to make any closing statements?
I appreciate the opportunity. I mean, this has been a year where everybody learned a lot, but I think we still have some challenges in 2021. Before things are, I won't even say back to normal, right? But we a lot of good lessons learned this year, and I'm optimistic about 2021. It'll be a challenge, but Lord knows I hope it's better than 2020. So.
Ike, let's look back a year from now at this recording and just see how close we were.
How about that? We'll do that.
Yeah, I enjoy being on the panel. I enjoy listening to the other panelists. I took a number of notes. 2 people can move 300 trailers. I haven't heard that before. So Marcus, that was great. So yeah, it was great hearing what everyone else is doing.
Well, yeah, likewise. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Jack, Marcus, Rob, Ben, it was a pleasure and an honor. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'll turn it back to you, Dr. Jeremy Smith.
Thank you very much. I do definitely appreciate everyone on here. Thank you for all the updates and stuff like that. If every truck driver can do 300 in a day, I think everyone will be, the cost could go down quite a bit. But no, it was very interesting hearing everything. I hope that we could keep this connection going and keep reaching out to all of you. So thank you so much for everyone attending. And on a final note, thank you for the roundtables, Jacksonville, South Carolina, Atlanta. Thank you so much. We appreciate all of you, and we appreciate our veterans today.
Go Army.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
right,
Jeremy.
thank you.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.